Back in the late 1800s, this flat Texas countryside could easily have been the setting for some stories of the Old West. Stories involving cowboys, shootouts, and gunfights, where the hero emerged victorious and reigned tall as a giant in the territory. Well, not only have the times changed, but the stories have too. Today, this countryside is a rice field outside the town of Mont Belvieu, Texas, site of an Enterprise Petrochemical Company plant. And today, there are two giants in the territory, two giant 900,000-pound distillation towers, two Tall Texans. These vessels, manufactured to break down butane gas, stand 275 feet tall. Because of their size and weight, transporting and erecting them on the site could have been a problem, but not for riggers and constructors. This Houston-based company possessed all the necessary skills to do the job, and once again proved themselves a giant in the business of heavy hauling and erecting. The finished product speaks for itself, a job showing precision and planning at its best. But the finished product isn't the whole story. This job took a lot of equipment, manpower, and teamwork. And the best way to show how it was done is to go back to the beginning of the project and see riggers and constructors in action. The job took place on a rice field, where a 3-layer board road had been laid to handle the weight of the vessels and heavy machinery needed for the job. Once riggers and constructors moved in their heavy equipment, they began the first step of the project, digging holes for the dead men. These concrete dead men measured 12 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 18 inches thick. Riggers and constructors specially designed and fabricated them to handle the total weight of both vessels, 1,800,000 pounds. Another item brought in to handle this tremendous weight and bulk was a 300-ton Lama crane mounted on rubber tires, the largest lift crane of its kind. Riggers and constructors delivered it to the site by truck, where Lama crawler cranes loaded it onto its carrier. Just 4 hours later, after the boom, counterweights, and other components were installed, the giant machine was ready to go to work. The next phase of the project was transporting the vessels to the job site. Riggers and constructors brought the vessels in, one at a time, on 2 special rail cars. The size of the vessels was determined by the maximum rail clearances during the design stages of the plant. When the first vessel arrived on site, the riggers and constructors team was ready to unload it from the rail car. For this job, a braided sling made of 9 parts of 2 1/4-inch wire rope was attached to the 300-ton crane and placed around the 14-foot diameter vessel. With this special sling, the crane lifted the bottom end of the vessel and moved it off the rail car onto a 48-wheel dolly. The next step was to maneuver the 275-foot-long vessel along the board road toward the erection site. To do this, the dolly pulled the bottom end of the vessel along the road, while the rail cars, which were still holding the top end, moved forward. When the vessel was parallel to the road, the 300-ton crane and specially constructed sling moved in to lift the top end of the vessel from the rail car and transfer it onto a second 48-wheel dolly. This dolly, designed and built by riggers and constructors, was especially suited for this project. Its 16-foot width provided good distribution of the vessel's massive load on the board road and support for the unstable soil underneath. And since the dolly is capable of being steered hydraulically, it was easy to maneuver the vessel around tight turns. Because of riggers and constructors' careful planning and engineering, the entire unloading procedure took just 4 hours. They had analyzed every phase of this job, all the way down to the smallest detail, months before the project began. So they were aware of all the obstacles they would encounter along the way and were prepared to handle them. That is why Riggers and Constructors is regarded as a leader in the business. Another reason is their extensive supply of high-quality, heavy-duty equipment. Riggers and Constructors owns all the hauling and rigging machinery needed for this job. Take these gin poles, for example. Riggers and Constructors trucked all the sections and components to the job site and assembled them to their full length. Then load blocks were attached and reeved with 22 parts of 1 1/8-inch wire rope, and 1 1/2-inch guy lines were laid out from the dead men and attached to the top spiders. Next, they erected the poles, each weighing approximately 100,000 pounds and measuring 180 feet long. To do this, they used the 300-ton crane equipped with a 220-foot boom to lift the top of the pole, while a smaller 50-ton crane equipped with a sling tailed it to its foundation. Here, the crew guided the pole into the foot block and secured it in place with the guy lines. Considering the size and weight of the vessel, as well as time limitations, economy, and above all safety, the gin poles proved to be the only practical method of lifting. Plus, these poles had a total safe lifting capacity of 490 tons, more than enough to accommodate the job. When the gin poles were erected, the crew prepared the vessel for the lift. First, they covered it with insulation and wired it for the proper aircraft warning lights. Then, after rotating the vessel to its proper orientation, they equipped it with a specially designed lifting device consisting of a steel sleeve and a solid steel shaft. To install the device, the crew first placed timbers inside the openings of the vessel to provide temporary support for the sleeve during its installation and removal. Then, with exacting precision, they threaded the 20-inch diameter steel sleeve through both side openings of the vessel and inserted the solid steel shaft, measuring 18 inches in diameter. Next, they attached the retainer rings to both ends of the shaft, and then connected each end of the lifting device to the load blocks on the gin poles. The lifting power supplied to the load blocks was provided by a 2-drum Model 350 American level deck hoist. Now it was time for the lift, only 8 days after Riggers and Constructors unloaded the vessel from the rail cars. Several spectators were on hand to see this monstrous 450-ton vessel suspended in midair on its way to a height of 275 feet. Shortly after the vessel began its ascent, the crew momentarily brought it to a halt to make sure the guy lines and dead men were secure and the gin poles were plumb. These precautionary inspections were made throughout the procedure to ensure the safety of the crew and the success of the lift. While the hoist continued to lift at a rate of 40 feet per hour, a 150-ton crane was on hand to tail the vessel to the foundation. During the lift, the crew removed the timbers from the foundation, and as the tower neared the lazy guy lines at the top of the gin poles, the crew loosened these lines at ground level to provide extra slack. When the vessel reached its full extension, the bottom end of the vessel was guided into the anchor bolts on the foundation. The 4 guides extending past the anchor bolts helped the vessel settle on the bolts without the danger of binding. Riggers and Constructors successfully completed the erection of the first vessel exactly as planned in just under 4 hours, the result of proper execution by an experienced team. But the job wasn't over yet. They still had one more vessel to lift, and they repeated the same procedure in less time and with greater ease than the first, once again performing the job with smoothness and precision. The entire project, from digging the dead men through erecting the second vessel, took riggers and constructors about 1 month, well ahead of schedule. A minimum amount of time with a maximum amount of success. As professionals in the field of heavy rigging, they are accustomed to handling jobs of this type and size. They're also accustomed to giving 100% of themselves, their time and their service, to ensure their customers a job well done. During the past 19 years, riggers and constructors has consistently provided the Gulf Coast area with a high standard of quality and workmanship. And Tall Texans is just one of many projects based on that solid reputation.